For some of you, this just might be your shoe of the year. So I have a feeling many of you are not going to like what I have to say. This is Endorphin Speed 3, and it's time to take it for a run. Yo, what's going on everybody? My name is Kofuzi, and today I'm going to be telling you about the Endorphin Speed 3. I've gone on a few runs in this shoe. I've got about 30 miles total in it with some efforts at easy pace, marathon effort, threshold, and some strides. And I want to tell you my thoughts on this shoe that I think is going to be, for many people, a fan favorite. But before I do that, let's talk about some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that I purchased myself. No one sent it to me. No one's paying me to make this video. And no one's going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Endorphin Speed 3. First, let's go over some specs on this shoe. This is a 36 millimeter stack height shoe with an 8 millimeter drop, giving us 28 millimeters of stack height in the forefoot. The forefoot is comprised of two main elements. It's Power Run PB and a nylon plate. First, let's talk about that Power Run PB. It's a beaded foam that looks a lot like Boost, if some of you guys are familiar with that, but it's a lot lighter than Boost, and the way that Saucony is using it in their Power Run PB, it performs a lot better than Boost does as well. Power Run PB is Saucony's premier racing caliber foam. It's lightweight, it's springy, it's resilient, and it also absorbs a lot of impact from the road. The nylon plate that's in here is distinguished from the carbon fiber plate that's in the Endorphin Pro 3, which is kind of the bigger sibling to this Endorphin Speed 3. And it has an S-curve design and also wings. And these wings are on the side, and you can see them over here on both the outer side and on the inner side of the shoe as well. What they do is they provide a little bit more stability in the shoe. I think nylon itself doesn't really do a ton in terms of either propulsion or stability when compared to, say, a carbon plate, but this wing design I think is going to give it a little bit of extra rigidity. But even then, it's in there, but it's just, I don't think it's going to be doing a ton of stuff, at least not in a way that I've been able to notice. Moving to the outsole, we have Saucony's XT900 rubber formulation, which is the same compound that they've been using in the past couple of years, but this year for the Endorphin Speed, they've changed up the way it looks. It matches the changes that they've made to the Endorphin Pro 3, but there are some differences because of the way that the shoes themselves are a little bit different. The main thing that I've noticed is in the Endorphin Pro 3, this strip of rubber that's right here in the Endorphin Speed 3 is replaced with a gap where you could see the carbon fiber plate. There's no carbon fiber plate in here, and there's no window to that carbon fiber plate, or at least the nylon plate in this shoe. And so instead you have more foam and an extra strip of rubber. Moving to the upper, we have a very well-fitting upper. Saucony can really make a race upper. And this is a little bit toned down from, say, the racing version that's in the Endorphin Pro 3. It's a little bit more traditional, but it's also not as plush as like most of the daily trainers that you'll see out there. Everything is stripped down really nicely. The tongue is very thin. It's got a little bit of a notch on the top, so it sits right on the ankle really well. And in the back, there isn't that much padding at all. There is a strange, like, seashell type of kind of like piece of armor, little piece of plastic that's back here that is part of a mild level of structure that's in this heel cup. But otherwise, everything up here is nice and floppy, and the shaping of the materials and the fit of those materials is what gives this shoe all of its structure. All told, this shoe comes in at a relatively light weight of 8.1 ounces or 229 grams. Now let's talk about what it was like to run in this shoe. My first run in this shoe was absolutely fantastic. I took it out for a 10-mile run where a bulk of it was a 3-mile threshold effort followed by a set of strides. I felt like that is where this shoe just really does well. The shoe absolutely loves running at those faster speeds. I was getting a lot of cushion, almost felt too squishy, but it didn't really feel like it was slowing me down or I was getting penalized for that extra comfort. So it was more comfort that I was expecting in a shoe that still allowed me to run really quickly. The shoe is really lightweight, so it doesn't feel like it's bogging you down at all. I was mostly kind of in the midfoot and in the forefoot, so I didn't really feel too much of the stuff that's going on in the heel, which I'll talk about in a little bit when I talk more about some easy paces. But at threshold paces, the shoe is really lively, super exciting to run in, and I had a really fun time taking it out for a workout. Now, even though there's a lot of squish and kind of deflection of the foam in this shoe, I still felt like it was pretty stable. I didn't feel like my feet were caving in at any point. And I think that's where the wings on that nylon plate are kind of doing their job in keeping everything from kind of deflecting too far in one side or the other as your foot hits the ground. The interesting thing about the Endorphin Speed 3 this year is that there seems to be a lot more of that hint of stability that Saucony likes to put in a lot of their shoes. So one of the ways they're signaling that is in the way that the foam is kind of like shaped over here right underneath the arch. And then when you kind of like look at the shoe from like the top down, there's like an extra bulbous portion of the shoe right here, kind of on the inside portion of the heel. Again, in a place where a lot of people, when their foot hits the ground, they might be caving in a little bit. If you like that hint of stability in Saucony shoes, good news. It's in this one. But if you don't, like me, then bad news again. That's something that is going to be a little bit of a problem, especially because this shoe is really intended to be a long run marathon training companion to the Endorphin Pro 3, or it might be the shoe that you're training in and ultimately planning on racing in. The shoe does have quite a bit of an aggressive geometry. It's a little bit later in the toe off, but once you get up on the toes and in the final stages of the toe off, the shoe really curls up aggressively to the point where when I was on my strides, it almost kind of felt like my toes were almost touching the concrete because the shoe just rolls so aggressively in the forward direction, and you're just not getting a lot of foam kind of like in these latter portions really close to the tip. Not going to be a huge problem for the way most runners are going to be using the shoe. It's not really intended to be like a mile race shoe, not something that's necessarily intended for track racing, but it's going to be something that's a little bit more relaxed, like threshold efforts, or mainly for a lot of you guys at marathon pace. And the next couple of runs that I ran in this shoe were really focusing on both easy paces and those marathon efforts. And that's where the shoe like started out really great for me, and I thought this could be one of the better like non-carbon plated marathon shoes to hit the market this year. And overall it still may be, but I ran into a couple of problems. First, let's talk about the good stuff. When I'm taking this shoe at marathon pace, it is a lot of fun, probably better at marathon pace than it is at threshold paces. I think that the softness of this shoe kind of like lends itself to the squish being like the right timing and level of response when you're moving your legs at a cadence and at an amount of force that you're using for your marathon efforts versus the faster threshold effort. So I really enjoyed my time in this shoe, and it made me feel like this shoe is like a really nice kind of like racing companion if you love, for example, in the Saucony lineup, the Triumph, which is their max cushion shoe, which has a different formulation of Power Run in it, kind of like the everyday version of Power Run, not the Power Run PB, but that's also a beaded foam and really nice at absorbing a lot of impact, but that version is a little bit heavier, a little bit more like Boost. When I had the Endorphin Speed 3 at marathon paces, it felt like it was like a trimmed down version of the Triumph in a good way, kind of like a race version of the Triumph, and it was very exciting to be able to run marathon paces. The other shoe that the Endorphin Speed really reminds me of in such a good way is the Boston 9, which probably will be kind of like one of those legend status shoes that don't exist anymore, and the current iterations of it just aren't quite the same, and the one that a lot of runners keep harping back to in pretty much an annoying way because they like the shoe so much and now it's gone. But the Boston 9 was a fantastic marathon trainer, durable enough to handle a bunch of your workouts, but also versatile enough to handle some easy runs as well. I was thinking that in my marathon efforts in the Endorphin Speed 3 that this shoe could be the next real successor to the Boston 9 and the shoe that those Boston 9 faithful have really been begging for. But I ran into a little bit of a problem as I was running in this shoe. 2 times I tried to take this shoe kind of for longer marathon effort runs. And the first time that I did that, I ended up cutting my marathon effort portion of the workout just to 3 miles at marathon effort because the shoe started to develop a hot spot in the right foot, right under the pad of the foot. Now, I thought that maybe this is something related to the fact that I had a little bit of a head cold last week. And I thought maybe, you know, lots of things are achy, maybe things are swollen and congested. Maybe that's also affecting my feet. So I didn't really want to put this review out last week because I wanted to get another long marathon effort run in before I kind of put my final thoughts to paper. Yesterday, I did the same type of run where I tried to do a little bit of a warm-up, 1 mile warm-up, 1 mile cool down, and the goal was to hit 10 miles at marathon effort. And on the second run, things started out well. I was having such a great time. Those thoughts of the Boston 9 were swirling through my head. But at about 4 miles into that marathon effort, my right foot started to get warm, and very quickly that turned into a hot spot that then eventually turned into just a very painful, tender spot to have underfoot, to the extent that at the 8.5 mile mark, I shut the workout down. Not that I couldn't have got to the 10 mile mark with it at marathon effort. I just have a lot of marathon training coming up. Got 3 marathons coming up in the next 3 months. So I didn't want to push anything too far that I didn't really feel like was necessary. So I cut the workout short because that pain in my right foot appeared again. And so that's going to be a real problem for me in this shoe. And the day before this run, I had a 8-mile run with some strides in a different shoe, and I had absolutely no problem with left or right foot. And so I definitely think that this is very much a shoe dependent problem, because in the last 2 weeks, this pain has happened twice, and it's both been in the Endorphin Speed 3. So that's unfortunate for me. I know that it's not happening for a lot of you guys out there, because a lot of you guys have already been telling me how much you guys love this shoe, and I've been hearing from a lot of other people as well. So kind of trying to extract out the bad experiences that I had, which I think is going to maybe affect a small minority of people. I think that for the people that don't have that hotspot issue in this shoe, I think that you guys are absolutely going to love this shoe. And I think that you're going to really find that this shoe is very versatile for everything from easy pace up to marathon pace, and even up into the threshold paces as well. You'll be able to take it for your workouts, and you'll be able to take it for your easy days. Although it's not the softest shoe, but it definitely is an easy day capable shoe. So there's an incredible amount of versatility in it, and it's a really fun shoe to be able to run in. But if you do tend to get hot spots in certain shoes, make sure you're getting it from a place that has a really good return policy. So that way, when you take it on your long run, you could see if it's going to be a shoe that works out for you or not. For me, it's something that appeared pretty much kind of like on run 2 when I was using at marathon pace, which I think is kind of its intended use case. So hopefully it's something that you guys will be able to spot pretty soon within that return window, because either it's going to be one of the best shoes you run in this year, or it's going to be a shoe that you really can't run in very much at all, which is unfortunately the case for me. So those are my thoughts on the Endorphin Speed 3 after about 30 miles total in the shoe. I don't think that I'm going to be running that much more in it. I might put in a couple of more runs in it here and there as I compare this shoe to some other shoes, but it's really not a shoe that I'm looking forward to putting on again. So if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday right here on YouTube. You can always ask me anything in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?